My name is Claire Bennett, and the night before my wedding, my mother stood in front of my future family and accused me of building my life on a lie. She had no idea I already knew the truth. 9 years earlier, my sister had taken the internship meant for me, used my portfolio, changed my contact information, and built a career under credentials that belonged to me. My father had paid for her flight and housing in Chicago, then stayed silent. But when my mother tried to expose me at the welcome dinner, she revealed one detail only the person who intercepted the company's call could have known. In that moment, the woman who had controlled our family's story for years finally exposed herself. The first thing I noticed when Ethan and I pulled into the parking lot was my mother's black SUV turning in behind us. My fingers tightened around the strap of my purse before I could stop them. Ethan glanced at my hand, then at my face. He did not ask whether I was all right. He knew better than to make me explain a feeling before I had even found words for it. Instead, he reached across the center console and rested his palm beside mine. "We can sit here for another minute," he said. I shook my head. If I waited, I might lose the nerve to go inside. The restaurant stood beside the water in Davidson, North Carolina, its wide windows reflecting the last orange light of the evening. It was elegant without feeling showy, exactly what Ethan and I had wanted for the small welcome dinner before our wedding. Tomorrow, I was supposed to walk down an aisle and begin a new life. That night, my mother arrived, determined to drag my old one into the room with her. Ethan's parents were already inside. His mother, Margaret, crossed the dining room as soon as she saw me. "There you are," she said, smiling as she adjusted a fold near my shoulder. "This dress is perfect on you." It was a small gesture, but it caught me off guard. Margaret never touched me to correct me. She touched me with care. Behind her, Ethan's father, Robert, raised his glass and said he had been promised good food and no speeches longer than 5 minutes. Everyone laughed. For a brief moment, I could imagine the evening going well. Then the restaurant door opened. My mother, Diane, entered first. My father, Richard, followed a step behind her. My older sister, Vanessa, came last, moving slowly enough to make certain everyone noticed her. They were 20 minutes late. Diane offered apologies with a warm smile and blamed traffic, though I knew they had left their hotel less than 3 miles away. She kissed my cheek. "Claire," she said, looking me over, "you should have called me before choosing that dress. The neckline is lovely, but it is a little severe on you." Margaret's hand paused beside mine. I smiled because that was what I had been trained to do. Vanessa hugged me next. "The place is beautiful," she said. "You always land on your feet somehow." The studio, Ethan, this wedding. You have been very lucky with people stepping in at the right time. It sounded like praise if you did not listen too closely. I had spent most of my life listening closely. My father gave me a stiff hug and told me I looked happy. He did not meet my eyes long enough for me to believe he meant it. As we moved toward the table, I noticed that he kept watching Diane. Every time she shifted in her chair, his shoulders tightened. Dinner began politely. Margaret asked Vanessa about her work. Robert asked my father about golf. Ethan kept his knee against mine, beneath the table, a steady point of contact that asked nothing from me. Diane corrected me 3 times before the appetizers arrived. When I said my design firm had recently expanded its residential division, she reminded everyone that I had always needed help with numbers. When I mentioned hiring 2 new employees, she laughed and said I had once cried because I could not organize a school fundraiser. Each story was technically true. None of them belonged at my wedding dinner. Vanessa added that I had always been emotional under pressure. She said it lightly, almost affectionately. My stomach tightened. I took a sip of water and focused on the glass in my hand. Then Diane placed her napkin beside her plate. "There is something Ethan needs to understand before tomorrow," she said. The table went still. Ethan looked at her without changing expression. "What do you think I need to understand?" he asked. Diane sighed as though the burden had been forced upon her. "Claire has a history of making impulsive decisions and then rewriting events when they do not go the way she wants. I would never forgive myself if I let a good man enter a marriage without knowing that." Heat moved up my neck. Vanessa lowered her eyes in a performance of discomfort. "Mom is only trying to protect everyone," she said. Claire had a very extreme reaction when she lost that opportunity in Chicago. It affected the whole family. Ethan's hand remained beside mine. "What opportunity?" he asked. Diane looked directly at me. "The internship at Hartwell and Pierce Design in 2017. The name struck me like cold water. I had not heard anyone in my family say it aloud in years. Diane continued before I could speak. "Claire accepted the internship, then panicked when it was time to leave. She quit because she could not handle the pressure. Afterward, she blamed us for not forcing her to go." Vanessa frowned. "That is not exactly what happened," she said. "Claire was never officially accepted. She told people she had an offer, but the company never confirmed it." Ethan looked from my mother to my sister. "Those are two different stories," he said. Vanessa's face changed for half a second. Diane answered quickly. "The details have become confused over time." Margaret leaned back in her chair. She said nothing, but I saw her exchange a glance with Robert. My fingers had gone numb. The room seemed to recede from me. Plates moved. Glasses touched the table. Someone laughed near the bar. All of it sounded distant, as though I were underwater. I stood too quickly. "I need some air," I said. No one tried to stop me. I walked toward the windows overlooking the lake and pressed my fingertips against the cool glass. My breathing came shallow and fast. I hated that my body still remembered before my mind had decided what to feel. Ethan came to stand beside me. He did not touch me. He waited. After a few seconds, I reached for his hand. "There is something you need to know," he said quietly. I looked at him. "Your mother and Vanessa have both contacted me privately." The shame that moved through me was immediate and irrational, as though I had done something wrong simply because they had spoken about me. "When?" I asked. "Over the last few weeks." He told me Diane had emailed him claiming I had fabricated the internship offer to get attention. Vanessa had sent messages saying I had refused the position because I was jealous of her career, and later invented a story that she had taken something from me. I stared at him. "Why did you not tell me?" Because I wanted to know whether it was more than one cruel message before I brought it into our home. And because their stories did not match. "How much have you checked?" He hesitated. "Enough to know I am not making any judgment tonight." That was not an answer, but I heard the care inside it. He was leaving the decision with me. I squeezed his hand, then turned back toward the table. Diane was watching us. I sat down and looked at her. "You said the company called the house." I said. Her expression tightened. "I did not say that." "Yes." "You did." "You said I quit after they called about Chicago." Diane lifted her glass. "Claire, this is exactly what I mean." You twist conversations? Why are you certain they called to ask why I did not arrive? She answered too fast. Because the woman was furious. The silence around the table became complete. Diane seemed to hear her own words a moment too late. She set down her glass. You must have told me that, she said. I had not. At the time, I believed the internship had been canceled. I had never known anyone from Hartwell and Pierce called looking for me. Diane's eyes hardened. You are embarrassing this family. For most of my life, those words had been enough to silence me that night. They were not. If Ethan needs to know the truth, I said, he will hear it from me. He will also see every record that can be verified. He will not be asked to choose between your version and Vanessa's version while I sit here defending myself. Ethan nodded. I am not making a decision based on accusations that contradict each other, he said. Margaret placed her napkin on the table. In our family, she said, we do not force someone to prove her sanity in front of a dinner table. Diane looked stunned. Vanessa looked angry. My father looked down at his hands. I took out my phone. For years, I had kept one old folder buried beneath tax documents, project photographs, and things I rarely opened. My thumb trembled as I found it. Inside was a screenshot of an email I had once believed would change my life. Congratulations from Hartwell and Pierce Design. The date beneath it was April 14th, 2017. I turned the screen toward Ethan. If you want to understand what happened tonight, I said, I have to begin with the day I thought my life was finally opening. And just like that, I was 25 again, sitting on the edge of my childhood bed, reading the same sentence over and over while my mother stood in the hallway listening. The email had arrived on April 14th, 2017, at 9:17 in the morning. I had been back in Raleigh for less than 2 months after finishing my design program in Savannah, and I was working temporary hours at a furniture showroom while sending applications everywhere I could. Most mornings began with rejection notices. That morning began with the word, congratulations. Hartwell and Pierce Design was offering me a 12-week internship in Chicago. I read the message once, then again, then a third time before I trusted myself enough to breathe. The firm was known for restoring old buildings without erasing the communities inside them. During my video interview, Thomas Hartwell had spent nearly 10 minutes asking about a housing project in my portfolio. I had redesigned an abandoned elementary school as affordable apartments for older residents and multi-generational families. Thomas had leaned toward the camera and asked why I had placed the shared kitchen at the center of the building. Because people protect places where they know each other, I had said. He smiled. That answer stayed with me for weeks. When the offer arrived, the first person I called was Daniel. He answered on the second ring. You got it, he said before I could speak. How do you know? Because you only breathe like that when something good happens or something is on fire. I laughed so hard I started crying. I got it. Chicago. For 12 weeks. There may be a full-time position afterward. Daniel shouted loud enough that I had to pull the phone from my ear. Start looking for apartments, he said. I am serious. Claire, do not wait until every affordable room is gone. I promised I would. Then I called my family. Diane appeared in my doorway before I finished dialing. Who are you calling? She asked. Dad and Vanessa. Her eyes dropped to the laptop screen. Did you hear back from that company? I nodded. I got the internship. For one perfect second. My mother looked genuinely proud. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around me. "I knew you would," she said. "I always knew you were meant for something bigger than Raleigh." By lunch, she had called 2 aunts, my grandmother, and a neighbor I barely knew. "My youngest is going to Chicago," she announced to each of them. One of the best design firms in the city chose her. That evening, Vanessa came over for dinner. She hugged me and said she was proud of me. Then she looked down at her plate. "I just wish opportunities like that came to people who actually needed them," she said. I stopped cutting my chicken. "What does that mean?" "Nothing. You have always been good at school. People notice you." Diane reached over and touched Vanessa's arm. "Your time will come." Vanessa worked for a regional home furnishings chain and hated it, according to my mother. The problem was never Vanessa's performance. It was always a manager who failed to recognize her, a coworker who felt threatened, or a company that did not appreciate creative people. At dinner 2 nights later, Diane suggested I show Vanessa the portfolio I had used during the interview. It might help her understand how firms like Hartwell and Pierce evaluate candidates. She said. I hesitated. Vanessa noticed. "You do not have to," she said. "I would not want you to think I was stealing your secrets." The comment made me feel petty. "Of course, I will show you," I said. I opened the files on the family laptop because its screen was larger. Diane knew the password. Everyone did. It had been the same combination since I was in high school. Vanessa asked thoughtful questions about the apartment project, the material boards, and my restoration plans. For the first time in months, we felt like sisters instead of competitors. I left the files on the computer. 3 weeks later, the emails from Hartwell and Pierce slowed down. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I had missed a form. Maybe my replies sounded unprofessional. I searched my inbox every night, but I found nothing beyond the original offer and a short welcome note. One afternoon, I came home to find Diane standing beside the house phone with a pen in her hands. "Who called?" I asked. "Wrong number." She folded the paper beneath her palm. I remember noticing it. I also remember deciding not to ask again. On May 23rd, an email appeared in my inbox. The sender's address looked almost right. The message said the internship program had been canceled because of unexpected budget changes. There was no apology from Thomas Hartwell, no mention of future opportunities, only 3 short paragraphs and a phone number for questions. I sat on the kitchen floor reading it until the words blurred. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later. He read the message and frowned. "This does not sound right." It came from them. "The address is different, only by 1 letter." "Exactly." He crouched in front of me. "Call Thomas." I called the number listed in the email instead. A woman answered and asked for my name. After a brief pause, she said the decision was final and no additional information was available. I hung up feeling hollow. Daniel took the phone from my hand. "Let me call the number on the firm's website." Diane walked into the kitchen before he could search. "Do not do that," she said. Daniel looked up. "Why not?" "Because professional firms remember people who cannot accept rejection." She turned to me. "Claire, you do not want to become the applicant who keeps calling after being told no." Something in her voice made me feel 12 years old. Danielle stood. "This may not be a real email." Diane's expression cooled. "You are encouraging her to humiliate herself because you do not understand how fragile she becomes when she is disappointed." I stared at her. "Fragile." She sighed. "You know what happened when you lost the scholarship in high school?" I had cried for 1 night. In my family, 1 night of crying could become a permanent diagnosis. Vanessa came in while we were still arguing. Maybe they reviewed the portfolio again, she said. Sometimes people look impressive in interviews, then the work does not hold up. Daniel turned toward her. That is a cruel thing to say. It is a realistic thing to say. My father sat at the table without speaking. I looked at him. Dad, should I call the company directly? Richard rubbed his thumb along the edge of his coffee mug. Your mother understands professional situations better than I do. That was his answer. Not yes. Not no. A surrender disguised as neutrality. I did not call. On June 5th, Vanessa left town for what Diane described as a short design training program. My father paid for the flight and housing. No one told me where the program was. When I asked, Vanessa said Milwaukee. I believed her because believing her hurt less than questioning her. While she was gone, I withdrew from an interview with a small architecture firm in Durham. I told Daniel I was not ready. He said one canceled internship did not erase my ability. I heard accusation instead of encouragement. Every time he questioned my mother's version of events, I felt as though he were asking me to admit that my entire family had lied. I was not strong enough to consider that. Diane called him without telling me. She said I needed space and that his pressure was making my emotional state worse. He told me about the call. I defended her. That was the beginning of the end. We did not have one dramatic breakup. We simply became exhausted. He stopped asking me to challenge my family. I stopped telling him what happened inside the house. By August, we were speaking like polite strangers. I found work adjusting floor plans for contractors and helping real estate agents stage empty homes. I told myself I was learning practical skills. Privately, I believed Hartwell and Pierce had seen something in me that disappeared when they looked closer. Near the end of summer, Vanessa posted a photograph online and deleted it less than an hour later. She was standing beside a brick building beneath a street sign. I recognized the neighborhood from the housing listings Daniel and I had studied. Chicago. When I asked her, she laughed. A friend sent me that photo. You were in it? She rolled her eyes. Then it was from that training program. Why are you interrogating me? Diane stepped between us. Your sister attended a short course. It had nothing to do with your internship. I wanted to ask why they had lied about Milwaukee. Instead, I apologized. That was what gaslighting did to me. It made the most painful explanation feel safer than the obvious one. 9 years later, I was sitting in my office at Claire Bennett Design with 11 employees depending on decisions I made every day when my assistant transferred a call from a woman named Lauren Mitchell. Lauren worked for a recruiting firm conducting a background check for Vanessa. She spoke carefully. Ms. Bennett, I need to clarify a credential listed by your sister. She stated that you occasionally used her legal name professionally and that the two of you shared a portfolio during an internship at Hartwell and Pierce. I gripped the phone. I have never used Vanessa's name professionally. There was a pause. She also stated that you gave her permission to represent the internship as a shared experience. No, I said, I did not. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then every disconnected moment from 2017 shifted into place. The missing emails, the phone call, the Chicago photograph, the portfolio on the family laptop. The internship might never have been canceled, and Vanessa was still using it. Lauren asked whether I wanted to make a formal statement. Not yet, I said. Please do not reach a conclusion until I have checked the records. After the call ended, I did not contact my mother. For the first time in my life, I did not ask my family to explain what they had done. I opened the oldest email folder on my computer and began searching for the truth myself. Chapter 3. By midnight, I had found 37 emails, 6 portfolio files, and one fact I could not explain away. The original offer from Hartwell and Pierce had never included the word cancelled. I sat at my desk long after the rest of Claire Bennett design had gone dark, staring at the glowing screen while the air conditioner clicked on and off above me. The next morning, I told Ethan everything. He listened from the other side of our kitchen island while I walked him through Lauren Mitchell's call, the Chicago photograph, and the email address that differed from the real company address by one letter. When I finished, he did not reach for my laptop. He did not tell me what he was going to do. He asked one question: "What do you want to happen next?" I pressed my palms against the cool countertop. I need to know whether I remember it correctly. You have documents. I also have 9 years of being told I misunderstood everything. Ethan nodded slowly. Then we verify each part separately. He took a legal pad from the drawer and placed it between us. Who can confirm the interview? Thomas Hartwell. Who would have handled the records? Someone in administration. Who else was in the program? I do not know. He slid the pen toward me. You make the calls. I will sit beside you if you want me there. That mattered more than an offer to rescue me ever could have. I wrote 3 headings on the page: interview, records, witnesses. Before I could make the first call, my business partner, Julia Grant, appeared in my office doorway. Her face told me something had already gone wrong. We have a problem with the Rowan project. I closed the old email folder. How serious? Serious enough that you need to hear it from me before you hear it from the client. The Rowan project was a $420,000 renovation of a mixed-use property outside Raleigh. We had spent 5 months developing the plans. The contract was supposed to be signed that week. Julia shut the door. Celeste Rowan received an anonymous email. It says you invented professional credentials and stole design work from your sister. For a moment, I could not feel my feet against the floor. Did she cancel? Not yet. She paused the contract pending verification. Our project coordinator, Hannah Price, stood behind Julia with a tablet held against her chest. We hired 2 new people because of that project. Hannah said, I am not blaming you. I just need to know what I should tell the team. That was the moment the situation stopped being only about my past. 11 people worked at my studio. They had mortgages, children, rent, health insurance, and futures that had nothing to do with my mother or my sister. I called a meeting with Julia, Hannah, and our senior managers. There is a dispute involving an internship from several years ago, I said. Someone has contacted a client with allegations about my credentials. I am verifying the records with the firm involved and consulting an attorney. Julia folded her arms. What is our operating plan if Rowan walks? We shift the Carter and Linwood deadlines forward. We delay the equipment order. No new discretionary spending until we know more. And communication. Everything with the client stays in writing. No one responds to anonymous messages or discusses this online. Hannah looked at me. Are the allegations true? No. My voice shook slightly. But I did not look away. I cannot prove every part yet. That is what I am working on. Julia gave one sharp nod. Then we manage facts, not panic. That afternoon, I called Hartwell and Pierce. Thomas Hartwell sounded older than I remembered. At first, my name meant nothing to him. Then I described the affordable housing project in my portfolio. He went quiet. The converted elementary school, he said. You placed the shared kitchen in the center? Yes. You said people protect places where they know each other? My throat tightened. You remember me. I remember the interview. I gripped the edge of my desk. Was I offered the internship? Yes. You were one of our strongest applicants. Did you cancel the program because of budget changes? No. The word landed softly, but it divided my life into before and after. Thomas continued. The person who arrived in Chicago had trouble explaining several projects from the portfolio. I assumed the interview performance had not translated into the work environment. That person was not me. Silence followed. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. I need to connect you with Margaret Pierce. She handled administration then. Margaret called me the next day after retrieving archived records. The offer was issued to Claire Bennett. She said, "There is no cancellation notice in the file." I closed my eyes. What happened to my contact information? A request was submitted to update the phone number and mailing address after the offer was accepted. Was the request signed? Not electronically. Our verification process was inadequate at the time. She paused. The internship file remained under your name. The stipend paperwork was processed through an outside payroll service. Whose information was used? Vanessa Bennett's tax and banking information. I covered my mouth with my hand. Margaret spoke carefully. We should have caught the discrepancy. But you did not. No, we did not. She did not ask me to excuse the company. I respected her for that. Thomas gave me the name of another intern from the program, Melissa Crane. It took 3 messages before she agreed to speak. I knew something was wrong, Melissa said. I stood beside my office window, watching traffic move below. What did you know? We received an introduction sheet before the program began. It had your photograph. The woman who arrived was your sister. Did you ask her about it? Yes. What did she say? Melissa exhaled. She said Claire was her professional name and that the 2 of you shared a portfolio. Did you believe her? Not completely. Did you tell anyone? No. The answer hurt more because she did not soften it. Why not? I was 23. I was afraid of getting involved. I thought maybe it was a family arrangement I did not understand. She told me Vanessa had been removed from a community housing assignment after she could not explain the design process behind one of the submitted projects. Melissa still had a group photograph from the internship. She sent it while we were on the phone. Vanessa stood in the back row wearing a name badge that said Claire Bennett. I am sorry, Melissa said. I stared at the photograph. Thank you for telling me now. I was not ready to forgive her. I was not interested in turning her into a hero either. The next morning, Julia and I opened the original portfolio files on an old external drive. The metadata identified me as the creator. The files had been created months before the internship. We found early sketches, revision histories, client emails, and scanned notes in my handwriting. Julia leaned back from the screen. She is still using this project. I looked at the resume Lauren had sent for clarification. Vanessa had listed the same housing project as evidence of her leadership at Hartwell and Pierce. This is not only something she did in 2017, I said. No, Julia replied. She is doing it now. Our attorney, Rebecca Sloan, met with us that afternoon. She separated the situation into 3 issues. The first is the impersonation and the company's failure to verify identity. The second is unauthorized use of your work. The third is the continued use of false credentials in the current hiring process. What can I do? Preserve everything. Emails, files, metadata, messages, and voicemail. Do not publish any of it. Do not call your sister a criminal. Do not contact the employer and demand that they fire her. I do not want her fired because I asked for it. Good. You want the record corrected? Rebecca prepared a formal letter demanding that Vanessa stop using my name, internship, and portfolio. She made the distinction clear. This is a legal demand letter. It is not a court order. Vanessa received it on a Monday morning. By noon, she had called me 14 times. I did not answer. Rebecca sent a message reminding her that all communication needed to be in writing. Vanessa emailed that evening. She claimed I had given her permission because we were sisters and because our mother considered the portfolio family property. The next day, Lauren called again. Vanessa submitted an additional statement. She said, she is still listing the internship under her own name. After receiving the letter, yes. She also says you are retaliating because you have always been jealous of her. I almost laughed. The lie had survived so long that Vanessa no longer seemed to recognize where it ended. Celeste Rowan requested a meeting before deciding what to do with our contract. I met her with Julia beside me. There is a family dispute involving an old internship, I said. Independent records confirm that I received the offer and created the work in question. My attorney is handling the matter. Celeste studied me. Can your studio complete the project if this continues for several months? Yes. We have a revised staffing plan, protected project files, and a communication protocol. She closed the folder in front of her. I appreciate the transparency. The contract remains paused until our review is complete. It was not the answer I wanted. It was fair. That evening, Lauren informed me that Vanessa's hiring process had been formally suspended pending her written explanation. Minutes later, my phone vibrated again. The message was from my father. I found the old bank records. There are payments from 2017 that I should have questioned. I think we need to talk. I read the message 3 times. Then I set the phone face down without replying. The truth was no longer hidden inside one deleted email. It was spread across records, photographs, money, and the memories of people who had seen enough to ask questions, then chosen not to. My father asked to meet me 2 days later at a coffee shop near downtown Raleigh. He chose a place neither of us visited regularly, which told me he wanted privacy without admitting he was ashamed. When I arrived, Richard was already seated in the back corner with a thick envelope beside his coffee. He stood when he saw me. Thank you for coming. I sat across from him but did not take off my coat. What did you find? He opened the envelope and slid several printed bank statements across the table. One charge was for $1,146 to an airline. Another was for $2,400 to a furnished rental company in Chicago. And both payments had been made in May 2017. Richard tapped the first line with his finger. Your mother told me Vanessa had been accepted into a short design program. In Chicago? Yes. But Vanessa told me Milwaukee. His face tightened. I did not know that. You knew I had just lost the internship. I knew you believed it had been canceled. And you paid for Vanessa to go to the same city? He looked down at the statements. I saw Chicago on the receipt. I should have asked more questions, but you did not. No, the honesty did not comfort me. It only made the years feel heavier. Why? Richard rubbed both hands over his face. Because your mother had an explanation. She always had an explanation. If I challenged her, the house became unbearable. I stared at him. So you protected yourself? I thought I was protecting the family. No, you protected the loudest person in the family. He flinched. A server passed our table and asked whether I wanted coffee. I shook my head. Richard folded his hands. I am sorry. Claire? The words sounded sincere. They were still too small. You had 9 years to ask one question. I know. You watched me believe I was not talented enough. You watched me lose Daniel. You watched Mom call me unstable every time I remembered something differently. His eyes filled. But I did not rescue him from the discomfort. I cannot change what I did. No. And one apology does not replace 9 years of choosing not to know. He nodded slowly. I understand. I did not think he understood yet. But for once, he did not argue. Later that week, Daniel sent me an email. I had not spoken to him in years. He wrote that he had heard through a mutual friend that I was verifying what happened with Hartwell and Pierce. He said he still had something I should see. We spoke by phone that evening. His voice sounded familiar enough to hurt, but not familiar enough to pull me backward. I should have sent this to you years ago, he said. A forwarded email appeared in my inbox. It was from Diane. She had written that I was emotionally fragile and that Daniel needed to stop encouraging me to contact Hartwell and Pierce. She said his questions were making my condition worse. I read it twice. You never showed me this? No. Why? I thought leaving would lower the pressure on you. Your mother convinced me that every time I pushed, I was hurting you. You believed her. For a while, he paused. Then I realized she only called me when you started questioning her. I looked toward the dark kitchen window. You should have told me. I know. There was no excuse in his voice. Only regret. I am sorry. Claire, thank you for sending it. I hope it helps. It does. That was all. We did not discuss what might have happened if he had stayed. We did not turn memory into romance. When the call ended, I saved the email in the legal folder and closed the door on that part of my life. Diane did not contact me directly. She contacted Margaret. Ethan's mother called me the next morning. Your mother believes I need to know that you change your memories when you are under stress. I closed my office door. What did you say? I asked her why her version of the internship differs from Vanessa's. My mother had told Margaret that I quit. Vanessa had claimed I was never accepted. When Margaret asked about the contradiction, Diane said the details were complicated. Then Margaret asked how Diane knew someone from the firm had called about my failure to arrive in Chicago. She said you must have told her. Margaret continued. I did not. That was my conclusion. Margaret's voice remained calm. I also asked why she was calling me instead of speaking to you. What did she say? That you refuse to listen when people challenge your version of events. I almost laughed. That is convenient. Yes, it is. Margaret did not tell me she hated my mother. She did not make promises about choosing sides. She simply said, Claire, I have watched you handle a serious threat to your company without blaming your employees or attacking your sister publicly. That tells me more about your judgment than a phone call from someone trying to frighten me. That afternoon, Diane left Ethan a voicemail. He played it for me in our living room. My mother's voice filled the space between us. If Hartwell and Pierce had never called the house asking why Claire was not in Chicago, none of this would have become such a disaster. The woman was very upset that Claire had not arrived. I was trying to keep everyone calm. Ethan stopped the message. Neither of us spoke. The detail was unmistakable. My mother had known the internship was active. She had known the company expected me. Ethan saved the voicemail because it had been sent directly to him. We did not share it with anyone else. The next message came from Vanessa. It filled nearly the entire screen. She said we could end everything if I confirmed that the internship and portfolio had been shared family assets. In return, she would stop contacting my clients. I read that sentence aloud to Rebecca Sloan. She nearly admitted sending the anonymous email. Rebecca nodded. Do not respond emotionally. Vanessa's message continued. She said she had only used what our family had allowed her to use. That single sentence revealed more than she understood. She knew the work belonged to me. She simply believed permission from our mother mattered more than permission from its creator. Rebecca instructed Vanessa to send all future communication through her office. That evening, Ethan said he wanted Diane and Vanessa removed from the welcome dinner guest list. We were standing in the kitchen, reviewing final details for the wedding. They have already contacted my mother, he said. They have contacted your client. They should not be there. You do not get to make that decision alone. I am trying to protect you. Everyone says that right before deciding what I am allowed to handle. His expression changed. That is not fair. Neither is planning my own wedding around choices other people make for me. I turned toward the sink and removed my engagement ring before washing my hands. The moment I set it beside the faucet, Ethan went still. Are you taking it off because you want to leave? I looked at him. No, he exhaled, but the fear remained in his face. I am not canceling our wedding. I need you beside me. Ethan, not in front of me. I do not want them to hurt you again. Safety is not the same as taking away my choice. He looked down for several seconds. You are right. I dried my hands and put the ring back on. Then he asked the question I needed him to ask. What do you want to do? I decided the dinner would continue. Diane and Vanessa received written conditions. They were not to discuss the internship. They were not to contact Ethan's family privately. They were not to make accusations in front of guests. If they violated those conditions, they would be asked to leave. I did not prepare a public exposure. I brought only a short summary of the verified records that Rebecca had reviewed. Margaret told me I did not need to convince her with a speech. Tell the truth, she said. Do not become cruel simply because someone else chooses cruelty. Richard asked whether he could stand up at dinner and confirm what he knew. No, I told him. His face fell. If someone asks you directly, tell the truth. But you are not turning my wedding dinner into a public confession, so you can be forgiven faster. He accepted the boundary without arguing. On October 17th, Ethan and I walked into the restaurant beside Lake Norman together. My heart was pounding, but my hand was steady inside his. I was not there to make my mother believe me. I was not there to beg my sister to admit what she had done. I was there with the right to speak, the right to leave, and the right to decide what happened next. Then I saw Diane sitting at the table with a large envelope resting beneath her hand. I touched my engagement ring and kept walking. Ethan stayed close enough for me to feel his presence, but he did not guide me toward the table. That choice mattered. Margaret and Robert greeted us with careful smiles. My father sat near the end of the table, his hands folded tightly in front of him. Vanessa kept checking her phone. My mother rested one hand on the large envelope beside her chair, as though she wanted me to notice it. I noticed. I simply refused to ask. For the first 20 minutes, dinner almost felt normal. Robert talked about the weather forecast for the ceremony. Margaret asked whether the florist had confirmed the delivery time. Ethan thanked everyone for traveling to Lake Norman. My father barely spoke. Vanessa watched me whenever she thought I was looking elsewhere. My mother smiled too brightly. When the main course arrived, Ethan stood and lifted his glass. He thanked both families for coming. He spoke about the life we were preparing to build and about how much it meant to celebrate with the people who had shaped us. Then Diane pushed back her chair. The sound cut across the room. She reached for the envelope. I felt Ethan's hand tighten around mine beneath the table. Diane said she could not remain silent while her daughter entered a marriage built on deception. Ethan lowered his glass. He reminded her that she had agreed not to discuss the internship. Diane told him the agreement no longer mattered because he deserved the truth before it was too late. She pulled out a printed copy of the false cancellation email from 2017. According to her, I had created the original offer to get attention, then invented a story about losing the internship after people started asking questions. Vanessa leaned forward. She said I had spent years resenting her success and was now trying to destroy her career before my wedding. The old version of me would have defended every accusation at once. She would have spoken too quickly, cried too soon, and handed my mother another emotional reaction to use as proof. I placed my napkin beside my plate. Ethan started to stand. I touched his arm. "Let me," I said. He sat back down. I looked at my mother. If the offer never existed, I asked, why did Hartwell and Pierce call our house asking why I had not arrived in Chicago? Diane answered immediately. They only called because you kept bothering them. Who took the call? She looked toward my father. I do not remember. Then how do you know why they called? Her mouth tightened. The woman was upset. She said you had missed your starting date and had not arrived in Chicago. No one moved. I waited until the meaning of her words reached everyone at the table. The starting date was never included in the false cancellation email she was holding. It appeared only in the legitimate onboarding records. Diane looked down at the page in her hand. For the first time that evening, she seemed unsure. I spoke slowly. You knew they expected me in Chicago. You knew the internship had not been canceled. She said I was twisting her words. I opened my purse and removed a short document Rebecca had reviewed. I did not bring boxes of evidence. I did not need an audience to examine every email. I placed one copy in front of Ethan, one in front of Margaret, and one in front of my father. Thomas Hartwell confirmed that I completed the interview and created the portfolio presented during it. Margaret Pierce confirmed that the offer remained active. The firm's records showed that my phone number and mailing address were changed after I accepted. The payroll records carried Vanessa's legal and banking information. The original design files identified me as the creator months before the internship began. Vanessa pushed her chair away from the table. She said those files had been on the family computer. I looked at her. Being able to open something does not make it yours. She said I had always been more talented and that one internship would not have changed my life. The cruelty of that sentence was almost hidden beneath its simplicity. It changed my life. I said, you simply decided the change belonged to you. She said our mother had given her permission. Our mother did not create the work. Vanessa's face hardened. A resume is just the way people tell their professional story. No, I said. It is the way they represent what they actually did. Diane turned toward my father. Richard, tell them this family is being torn apart over a misunderstanding. My father stared at the document in front of him. Then he looked at me. He said he had paid for Vanessa's flight and housing in Chicago. Diane told him it was a training program. He admitted he knew I had just lost the internship, saw the city on the receipts, and chose not to ask questions because he did not want to fight with his wife. Diane told him to stop. He did not. He said his silence had made the lie possible. I felt no sudden rush of forgiveness. I only told him it was the first time he had spoken without hiding behind the excuse of keeping peace. Diane turned back to Ethan and said therapy had taught me how to rewrite memories in language that sounded convincing. Margaret placed her glass on the table. She said the Mercer family had heard enough personal attacks. She did not accuse anyone of a crime. She did not insult my mother. She simply reminded Diane and Vanessa that they had been given clear conditions for attending the dinner and had deliberately violated them. Then she asked them to leave. Diane looked at me as though waiting for me to reverse the decision. I did not. Before she stood, I explained what would happen next. All communication about the internship would go through my attorney. She was not to contact Ethan, Margaret, my employees, or my clients. Vanessa was to stop using my name, my internship, and my portfolio. I would not help her preserve the job opportunity she had pursued with false credentials. I would not ask the employer to fire her either. They would review the records and make their own decision. I told my mother I was not ready to meet or speak with her privately. I told my father he could contact me by text only until I decided otherwise. Diane said I would regret choosing strangers over family. I looked around the table. These people were not strangers. They were the people who had asked what I needed instead of telling me what I was allowed to feel. Vanessa left first. Diane followed without saying goodbye. The door closed behind them. No one celebrated. There was no applause. There was only silence and the painful realization that being proven right did not give me the mother I had wanted. Ethan asked whether I wanted to leave. I looked at the empty chairs, then at the people who remained. I wanted to stay. Margaret stood nearby but waited until I moved toward her before she hugged me. My father remained seated. He did not ask me to comfort him. That was the first respectful thing he had done all evening. The next morning, I married Ethan beside the lake. The ceremony was small and warm. When Ethan made his vows, he promised to stand beside me, never in front of me. I understood exactly what he meant. Safe love did not erase my past. It gave me room to stop living by its rules. 3 weeks later, Vanessa's prospective employer completed its review. She had been allowed to submit a written explanation, but she could not prove that she had permission to use my work or claim the internship. The offer was withdrawn. The disputed credentials were removed from her professional profile. I provided documents when requested. I did not make the decision for them. My mother faced consequences of her own. The community organization where she served as a public representative learned that she had contacted my client and my future in-laws during a personal dispute. The board asked her to step away while they reviewed the matter. She did not lose her home or every relationship she had. She lost something more important to her. She lost control of the story people believed. Celeste Rowan completed her independent review. She confirmed that the dispute had no connection to my professional ability or ethics. The $420,000 contract moved forward. When I thanked Julia and the team for holding the studio together, Hannah told me the contract was not what had made her feel secure. She said it was the fact that I had told them the truth before I knew whether I would win. 4 months later, Ethan and I were still learning. We attended counseling to work through his instinct to protect me too quickly and my instinct to treat every concern as an attempt to control me. My father began therapy once a month. He sent a short message without asking for forgiveness or demanding a visit. Sometimes I answered. Sometimes I did not. Melissa sent a specific apology for staying silent in Chicago. I accepted the apology without turning her into a hero. Vanessa found a lower level position at a smaller company after correcting her resume. I did not follow her career. My mother sent me a letter. She admitted that Hartwell and Pierce had called the house. She admitted that she believed Vanessa needed the opportunity more than I did. She apologized, then spent several paragraphs explaining why she thought she had been protecting the family. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I did not answer. Not because I wanted to punish her, because I no longer needed to react immediately to prove that my feelings were real. For years, I thought revenge would mean watching the people who hurt me lose everything. I was wrong. The most powerful revenge was taking back the right to define myself. If you were in my place, would you have allowed Diane another chance? Or would you have kept the same distance I did? Share your thoughts in the comments. And stay with the channel for more stories about family betrayal, hard boundaries, and the consequences people create for themselves